What up, you guys? Welcome back to Pro Publications YouTube channel. This channel talk about zines and DIY publishing. And today we're going to be looking at Youngblood issue 0, 1, 2, and 3. It was a laborious read, but nonetheless a fun read. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that everything about these comics were great. I'm also not going to tell you everything about these comics were horrible. There's a lot to pull away from this. Rob Liefeld, regardless of what people say about him, he has a few tricks up his sleeves that I think we can all learn from. And one of them is his uses of the double pages, man. I definitely love the way he lays out the comic books in a way that makes them interesting to read, doesn't let you fall asleep. It was a technique that I think may have helped me actually read these comics because they don't read very well. But the art in here as well is pretty damn tight. And this is another thing that I saw in this. And he has this throughout his series, but I like that, and I'm going to try to adapt something like that into the zines that I make. Because then you can pull it out and you don't lose anything. So I thought that was kind of fun, clever, and interesting. But the story, the way it's told, is it's real rough, man. There's no other way of saying it. One thing I want to mention before jumping into the comic books is that Rob Liefeld, at the time of publishing these Youngblood issues, was 25 years of age. Very, very young cartoonist, very, very young person. And in my opinion, he did great. But this is what I'm talking about here, of like, so you get this page here, and then it goes boom. Then it goes boom. You're reading it throughout this way. This way. This way. Boom. Okay. Oh, back to this way. Boom. Okay, this way. Another one. Another one. Another one. Okay, back to this way. And he does that throughout the issues, and I really dug that. I felt it was a way of keeping the reader engaged. It was a way of making sure there's an interactive aspect to the reading of the comic book, right? Turning the comic to get the full sense of the page, of the splash. So I dug that. Some of the things he does well, though, as well throughout the issues, I'll point them out, is that he kind of plays on certain tropes of machismo. So he's like, they're a relatively new squad with some potential personality conflicts, but I believe Stone's no-nonsense approach should be effective for our purpose, sir. And so he has, this tough guy persona for this character here, Stone. And this issue 0 is actually done in December. And I think issue 1 was done in April. So this one came after, and you can see a tighter, stronger story in this. But ultimately, it's a good premise that's laid out here. And the next issues, you can tell that they were trying to find their bearings because that story is super convoluted and it's all over the place. But this story opening sequence of this imperialist American group, because that's what they are. This is super like pro-imperialism and pro like Monroe Doctrine and all that other crazy jazz that I'm just not hip to. And that might be as well why the story just doesn't grab me. But there is this idea of like this rogue soldier who's just off the hinges. And so then he basically is beaten down and arrested by his own group. Which I feel like they alluded that this was going to be some kind of villain that later on was going to show up. But in the next 3 issues, you don't see him at all. And then ultimately they create this new Youngblood team almost as a PR front to get people to buy into this program, because obviously the population probably don't like this imperialist group that's going to other countries and as superhumans fighting American wars. And I understood that premise, but that doesn't make me like the characters anymore. And so then ultimately this is the commander of one Youngblood strike, which this Youngblood force is actually going out and doing things. And then this is almost just a PR poster boy Youngblood. Which I was surprised how much of this I don't remember. So that's issue 0, which like I said, that's the stronger of them. Here goes one thing that I didn't like was these flip stories. So each issue has like 2 different stories on there. And I really didn't like that. That doesn't help a very like fragmented, convoluted story to even make more sense. It actually hurts it and makes it make even less sense if that's possible. But ultimately, another thing that they did, like I said, I enjoyed this kind of stuff, and this is stuff that I'm planning on ripping. But in the first 2 issues, you do kind of see both the strike forces, both of the teams doing what they do. This stuff is very bare bones. It's just like action with, attempts at clever punchlines that don't really land very well. One thing I will say though is that some of this early image stuff, as I've been reading through them, they get pretty bloody, man. They get pretty violent. And I dig that about these. Like the premise, they might not show it all, but the premise and all that really comes out strong. So that's where this one ends, is they basically use the telepath to go into the mind of, a world leader that they don't like, the government doesn't like, and they want to get rid of him, and they force him to commit suicide as a way, right? So then Kusin's terror ends in suicide. USA Today. Then you flip it, going back to that thing of like, he does that pretty well. Here goes a sequence that I really did enjoy, except for this pose. I didn't like this pose at all. I thought that was a funny pose. But it was this idea of like, they're using this young black fella as a decoy because they're playing off of tropes and they know that he's going to fall into this trope. And I love it, right? They're so predictable. It almost takes the fun out of it. They fall for this ruse every time. That's right, Shaft. Beat the tar out of the innocent, harmless boy. Don't pay any attention to the real threat above you. Got your pen now. And I like that because it shows that these people are kind of the dumbasses and the idiots that I assume them to be. This Bad Rock sequence with his mom is as well just a waste of time. A lot of this is just strange to me. And then they have this whole ongoing battle with the 4 that continuously break out. And that's where that issue ends. But then you go back to Youngblood. We don't understand how we got here. We don't understand what's going on. But we're there. There's new characters that have never been introduced to us. And we're just like, just go. One of the things I will say though, respectfully dedicated to Jack, the King Kirby. And this is the Kirby character that they created. Legitimately looks like a very, very fucking sexy ass Kirby. You probably should have made him darker because the homie Kirby skin tone was hella dark. But yeah, you don't really know what's going on. And it goes on this whole other tangent, this whole other story to introduce Prophet. And this is what I'm talking about. Of like, I get it. They're trying to like really build hype for a bunch of different image properties. But first you should probably focus on telling a good coherent story for your characters. This is when you can already see that it was completely derailed and none of this makes sense. And this is issue 2. So issue 1, not as bad. There was a coherent story. You understood that there was 2 groups and what was going on. This next sequence for this story, it makes almost no sense and really goes sideways. One thing that I do enjoy, it's not even this battle, but going back to this pacing back and forth to keep the readers engaged, keep them moving the comic. Don't let them get lazy on you. I'm gonna rip that. You guys are probably, any subscribers to the Fro Comics Project, you guys are probably gonna start seeing me trying some of that stuff out. But ultimately, Prophet is awakened. He's the one that was foretold that was gonna like win a big battle against this Doom cult. He assumes that the Youngblood group is the culprits. But look at this, right? Like some of the usage of the blood and all that stuff. I think that Liefeld did it hella good. So they're like, oh no, like we got to jump into this battle. This battle that we were just introduced to maybe a few pages ago and don't fully understand what's going on. I've always dug the Prophet art. Prophet is such a cool character. The art is so super tight. But basically, they all die. The entirety of the Youngblood team dies. And then it becomes like a time traveling story. He's basically like, I gotta find them in the future. And then it goes back to this kind of PR Youngblood storyline. They have him incarcerated from the last battle. You're introduced to more characters and more drama that you were never mentioned about. Don't really have any understanding of what's going on. But they're trying to make it seem like it matters. New character. So this character here is breaking out these characters from the last issue that they imprisoned. She has ninjas. And I love this stuff, right? I counter with a kick to his ribs. See how he likes it. He loses his sword. I give it back. This sequence is tight. And then Chapel sequence is tight, right? Damn stupid ninjas. You're just hearing gunshots throughout. I love this usage of the blam. I love that too. Like he just dumped a whole clip on this fella. And then they teleport somewhere else. No one knows where. Youngblood shows up and he says, oh man, the main team had a big thing that occurred and we gotta go do that thing. The overall theme in like the Youngblood comics, as far as I could tell from these four, was this idea of like this corrupt American government really trying to meddle in world geopolitics and using kind of like a universal soldier system program of bringing back dead soldiers and controlling like cyborgs and things like that to really control what occurs in the world. And they alluded to in the beginning this idea that there's also clones, and Stone makes the argument of like, well, if there are clones, then who's to stop the clones from running the world or the government? And they're like, we'll never allow that to occur. But obviously alluding to like that's going to be an upcoming situation, or that might be his own little storyline, because I think he has his own comic somewhere else. So like I said, there's a lot that I liked about the Youngblood series, a lot that I like about what Liefeld did, but story wise it's not all there. And I think for the most part we all knew that, but you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? There's some good gems in here to take away as a cartoonist. Alright, you guys, that's all I got for you guys today. Please like, share, and subscribe. And don't forget, there will be a link in the show notes for my Big Cartel shop where you guys can get an issue of the Feral Comics comic book anthology zine that I publish. Beyond that, lates.